Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the SuDS-iQ project specifically, and I guess it'd just be good to understand a little bit about the background, how it came about, and I guess also how, HR Wallingford yourselves became involved in it.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So SuDS-iQ is an Ofwat Innovation Fund project. It's been running for about 6 months. HR Wallingford developed the proposal, and we're also the lead technical contributors and developers for it. So how it came about, we're involved in various bits of research, and this one came from a piece, something that we were doing that was funded by UKRI, but was a European project, research project, and it's about stopping urban pollution. It's called Stop Up. And our part of that was to develop a sort of academic research tool that looked at reducing stormwater contributions to sewers and trying to stop pollution from preventing, helping prevent sewer spills. So we recognise that that actually there was a need across the whole industry for tools that supported all stakeholders in understanding, planning, designing, and evaluating SuDS proposals. So we approached Southern Water, who we've been working with already with this idea, and they were very happy to support and lead the submission to Ofwat.
Okay, yeah. So in terms of the partners, there's yourselves, you mentioned Southern Water there. Are there other organisations that are contributing as well?
Yeah, so there are a few other water companies that supported the proposal, and so we have Yorkshire Water, who are very enthusiastic because they work with lots of different different sort of SuDS stakeholders through their Living with Water initiative. So Yorkshire, very engaged. United Utilities also signed up, Anglian and Thames Water, and they're all involved in providing direction and technical review for the project. But the benefit, the additional benefit of getting the multiple stakeholders in is that those water companies are also bringing to the table all the local authorities they work with, the consultants, both drainage consultants and landscape architects, and the developers and other environmental bodies, all of whom are involved in either promoting, funding, designing, developing SuDS across their drainage catchments, particularly those areas that have particular specific capacity issues.
And I mean, I'm going to ask, and apologies if it sounds sort of a bit cheeky, but are you slightly depressed that there's a need for this? Because I mean, I've been involved in the water industry since I think 1995, and I'm pretty sure SuDS existed then, but for whatever reason, the message doesn't seem, as you say, there's multiple stakeholders. I guess the water companies know exactly about it, but as you say, all the different people in the chain, architects, developers, etc., maybe don't. Is that a slightly depressing sort of scenario, or do you understand why the message hasn't still got out there?
Well, I think from a new build perspective, things like SuDS that are perceived as environmental enhancements rather than absolutely necessary, and there's no legal requirement to put them in. I think therefore they have, for a long time they've been put in as a bare minimum and not delivering on everything they could. So I think the government has been prevaricating about whether to make them mandatory for a very long time, and they've withdrawn from that again this year. So I think that there isn't really, unless there's a mandatory driver there, I think it's easy for these things to be sort of ignored, or an awareness not to be as high as it could and should be. In terms of retrofitting SuDS into water company networks, I think SuDS are still perceived as, or blue-green infrastructure in general, despite it being a huge policy objective both for the regulator and for many water companies. I think there's still a perceived, risk associated with their performance in particular, and that is one of the things that we're trying to address with SuDS-iQ, trying to help people believe that the performance is a little bit, have a bit more certainty with that than maybe they have done to date.
Okay, so yeah, as you say, the plans to deliver a national online collaborative SuDS platform. In terms of what SuDS is, how it works, etc. I mean, how is that going to be brought together? What will it be? Just a huge, great reference of documents, videos, etc., or will there be just what will the platform look like? No, please, yeah.
No, so I suppose it's. I mean, there's been lots of SuDS training courses available. There's been an enormous SuDS manual, which we have been involved in developing on 2 occasions, and the last one is 1,000 pages long. So I think that's another thing that has perhaps made it a little bit inaccessible to stakeholders. So what we're trying to build here is as a platform, is a set of tools, and essentially we're going to be holding users' hands, so stepping users through the process of understanding the characteristics of a particular site, getting access to all the data that would help them understand what might or might not be possible from a SuDS perspective, understanding what the objectives should be for surface water management, providing a really simple, intuitive, and really visual way of building together SuDS components, and then behind the scene running a very simple model that gives them some very intuitive outputs about how the system might be working, how much water you might be harvesting, how much you might be infiltrating, how much you're stopping going into the sewer. So it's not it's not a detailed drainage model, and therefore will have inherent sort of limitations in terms of what you can use it for. But we're hoping, at least at conceptual design stage, that simplicity will enable more people to actually sort of engage with the process.
Yeah, and in terms of, as you say, I think it's been going 6 months or so, so it's fairly early days. But in terms of some of the work you've done to date, I think you've developed the living impact and engagement plan. So what has been involved, and what is that itself?
So collaboration is a really big focus of this, and a real aim of the project is about sort of facilitating collaboration. So the impact and engagement plan has been targeted at trying to maximize both co-creation and co-use of the platform afterwards, collaborative use. So what we've done is we've been planning to maximize those opportunities by developing stakeholder groups that we can then use to both co-create and then test the platform as it goes, as the development progresses. So we started off with an initial draft of the plan. We then did an industry survey, which had about 130 or so responses, and then we used those responses and our initial proposal as the starting point for really scoping the platform design. Since then, we've reached out to our partners and got an idea of who they work with regularly, and we've developed these 3 regional collaboration groups. And then the first activity we had in May, and that was those 3 groups participated in 3 separate workshops. So the aim of those workshops was really to keep people together who have existing relationships in SuDS planning and design and funding. Each of those workshops had about 20 to 40 people in, and through them we explored initial wireframes for the platform, and then got really, really valuable feedback and comments. And so now we're updating the plan and our platform scope, and then working on the development of the tools, and then we'll come back to them in a couple of months' time, and have another set of workshops to where they get them to test the platform, and then keep it. So yeah, it's a sort of iterative process, but it's been really valuable. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just curious in terms of the initial sort of design and thinking of the platform, and then you've had this feedback, as you say, surveys and workshops. Did that by and large sort of confirm that what you had created, or were there any sort of surprises or left field things that you hadn't necessarily considered in the original platform? I guess
I think people recognised. I think what came out of it was the huge sort of range of different data sources that people felt might be valuable for the platform, and then recognising that this actually couldn't be a data platform because of the enormous challenges with sharing data between stakeholder groups of various data agreements. But I know there's another Ofwat funded project called Stream, which is about creating more data to be accessible by the wider industry. So perhaps there's we're hoping to engage with them to try and see how much, what data sets which are really relevant to us we might be able to bring onto our platform to allow people. I mean, things like sewer records, to be honest, things that that actually, if you're planning a retrofit SuD scheme, to know where your existing sewers are, both highway drains and water company sewers, is be a really valuable starting point, but that's not often available to stakeholders. Yeah, at least in the initial stage. So yeah, I think data and how we both limit the amount that we try and store on the platform, but also make accessible so that people have got it to hand when they're thinking about SuDs.
And maybe just following up that and what I mentioned earlier, is it perhaps more the case that SuDs, is known, but as I think you explained, people are not confident as to how best to deploy it, etc. So that's what needs to be addressed. So as to my own point, it's not that you need to introduce people to SuDs, it's you need to help them sort of become comfortable and understand how it works, so that rather than shy away from it, as you say, the building folks tend to go, well, it's just going to cause us hassle, etc. But to understand that there are many benefits for many, if not all, of the stakeholders. Is that the sort of direction of travel?
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, it's a key function of the feature of the platform will be this collaboration functionality. So what we hope to do is allow different collaborators on a scheme to all access the same files and the same sort of design or scheme suggestions and options. So then they can really work together and hopefully across all the collaborators, they can understand, if they put in something slightly bigger or smaller or in a different place or something that looks slightly different, then they can understand what the implications are for across not just their objectives but other people's objectives as well. So yeah, we're proposing that multiple people will be able to have access to the same scheme, and they'll be able to, and we'll have a functionality where they can share results, they can comment on schemes, they can look at different options and compare those. So yeah, we're hoping that will help.
And in terms of the time frame of the project, does it run for a fixed period that's already decided, or is it flexible as to how the work progresses? And I guess as part of that, it'd be good to understand what else has been planned. You're obviously getting the platform refined, you mentioned, but are there other things planned and any specific outcomes that you're looking to achieve?
So we got quite a lot of different platform elements to feed in. So there's the SuDS, what I would call the SuDS scheme creation and modeling stage, which is what we're working on at the moment, and then that collaboration functionality, which will be also sort of alongside that. But then we've also got plans for modules that allow this option comparison, so that'll be slightly different. We're planning a module that allows schemes to be evaluated against the new national standards, so hopefully that will support local authorities in being able to undertake a check of submissions that are made to planning and check that they meet certain criteria. We've also got a module which allows users to build up capital and maintenance costs and also carbon costs for the scheme, and then also compare options. And that's going to take a previously developed UKWER, UK Water Industry Research project output that was done by Stantec and ourselves last year, and then sort of transfer and incorporate that into the platform. And then the last thing that we're also going to try and incorporate is just a mechanism of being able to use this platform to basically just characterize a scheme. Well, if you've modeled it, then you'll be able to take that characterization and also just log it as almost as part of an asset management database, because at the moment there's a real challenge in the industry in that we've got lots of different organizations adopting and owning SuDS and approving SuDS, but we don't have any sort of systematic or consistent way of logging what those SuDS actually, or the as constructed scheme actually is and how it works. So if you think about maybe a permeable pavement that someone might put in, well, in 3 years' time, someone might tarmac over it, and no one would know what the functionality was supposed to be and what the implication then might be on the drainage infrastructure downstream. So I think it's really important to try and get industry to build up a consistent asset database of SuD schemes, and perhaps this platform might be able to help that.
And I'm just wondering as well, you mentioned obviously the sort of the government sort of indicates it's going to do something and then backs away. And we've also obviously had the Cunliffe report. So I don't want you particularly to comment obviously on that, but are you encouraged, I suppose, in general terms, that what you're doing is in line with this potentially new approach, a more collaborative approach that there seems to be at the bottom of the report, or are you still slightly worried that our mixed messages coming out, hence SuDS is sort of I don't know, not given as much sort of positive feedback as it should be, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm still sad and concerned that will be the case. I think the house builders have a grip on government or the Treasury, and their priorities will be first and foremost in the government's and potentially the local planning authorities' mind in trying to deliver the maximum numbers of houses. And so SuDS are, in not making them mandatory, we've basically accepted that they're up for sort of up for discussion, up for, an option that can on occasions be juggled with other priorities, perhaps. So yeah, I think there's definitely a risk there. I think it's sad. I think we can look at other countries and see a real proliferation of SuDS and a real drive to deliver them both in many parts of the world. So I think there's a risk we fall behind there and potentially create cities that aren't as resilient from a climate perspective as we might if we don't take the opportunity that managing surface water at source really gives us. I think it may be that this year the drought that we have this year pushes rainwater harvesting perhaps higher up the agenda, or and maybe even urban heat higher up the agenda. I think, but yeah, so we'll have to wait and see on that.
Yeah, and just I guess in terms of the actual project's potential for helping to raise the profile of SuDS and get more practical actions, are you sort of optimistic and excited as to what can be achieved, bearing in mind that framework I suppose we've just discussed? Yeah, but you're still quite positive that we can make a difference.
Well, I think yeah, we're hoping that by providing a really accessible and engaging way to explore SuDS, then which doesn't exist already, then that can only provide, that can only help in trying to I don't know, draw more people into the debate and provide and generate more advocates. I think by providing an alternative to costly drainage models, at least at the kind of concept design stage, where you can, other stakeholders are going to have the opportunity to play around with SuDS, how SuDS work, and I think that's really important. I think tools like this will be able to be used at A-level and university courses, where again software tools may be prohibitive for them to use those. So hopefully we can support or generate a generation of SuDS advocates coming through.
Yeah, and I suppose one final thing, because you give me plenty of time, but in terms of, I suppose, overall blue infrastructure, I mean, bearing in mind, obviously the water companies are getting pilloried at the moment for, the horrific state of our rivers, if you like. Do you think there is potentially a sort of a momentum with all of these, better management of water resources throughout the chain, and which SuDS may well sort of tap into, or do you think it's just a temporary thing, as you've alluded to with the builders? There are too many powerful stakeholders that can kind of resist the citizens' sort of voice and carry on as they always have.
I think we need to be thinking about, I think we're spending very large amounts of money on sorting out sewer overflows. That's one thing, but in the end, there are a lot of other contributors to the pollution of our water resources, and I think road runoff is a really big one. And I think this year there was some talk in the media about road runoff and highlighting all the toxic contaminants and forever chemicals and various things that are going to be in our rivers, whether we clean up our sewer overflows or not, they're still going to be very much be there. So I think we need to. I think one of the key things that we need to be focusing on with SuDS is that road runoff, particularly for major roads across the country, and I think that will be the next big thing. And I think there's a low awareness of that pollution source and the significance and toxicity of that pollution source by the public and probably quite a lot of the industry as well.
Okay, I mean, it's been great to chat, and thank you very much, because we sort of moved around in different directions from the original sort of project, but it's been so grateful for you to share so many brilliant insights. So Bridget, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
It's really exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.